Welcome to Series 10, exploring Leo Tolstoy. It's Paul Medeiros coming to you today from city of New Bedford, near my residence. Let's begin our examination of Leo Tolstoy's ideas by summarizing the ideas about good life we've learned this semester. First, we have two modest proposals about good life. From Socrates, the examined life. Here's a definition of examined life. It is human life committed to examining my assumptions, my beliefs, what I think I know, what I think is important. In short, those very ideas with which I conduct my life. According to Socrates in the Apology, examining my assumptions chastens me. I realize what I don't know, and moreover, my life is chastened. In the Apology, Socrates portrays examinations as informal, voluntary discussions that take place in public. Possibly there are other ways of examining my assumptions and thus my life. For example, journal writing may be a way of examining oneself, and writing one's autobiography may be a good way of examining one's assumptions. Second modest proposal comes from Henry Thoreau. Living simply, or simplifying my livelihood. I prefer the first phrase, living simply. Here's a definition. Living simply is the effort to limit the necessaries of daily life in order to pursue my calling. Like the examined life, Thoreau's living simply involves some reflection and deliberating about those things that we need on a day-to-day basis: shelter, clothes, food. And the point of simplifying my living is that I am freed to pursue what truly interests me, and that can therefore fulfill my life. These two proposals are universal proposals. They can be brought to any human life, and that's one of the reasons why I think they're valuable ideas for us, and very likely they're compatible proposals. We could practice some kind of Socratic examination of our assumptions, and also, as Thoreau proposes, practice deliberating about our necessaries and figuring out which ones and to what extent we really need. In addition, we have two full candidates for the good life. These are first introduced to us by Aristotle. The intellectual life on the one hand, and the moral life on the other. Let's first look at the intellectual life. Here's the definition. Intellectual life is human life committed to some or all areas of discovery and empowered by intellectual virtues. Aristotle focuses on the activity of contemplating and its virtue, wisdom. Our author, Henry Thoreau, proposes a more comprehensive intellectual life, including all areas of thinking activity and all of the intellectual virtues, including faith. For us today, the best example of the intellectual life would be the life of scientists, 100% committed to discovery, not interested in fame or success or wealth. We've noted some objections to the intellectual life. Some persons report that those committed to intellectual life are intellectually vicious and unable to relate to other persons on whom they depend. Those objections don't mean that the intellectual life is completely defeated. Those who defend the intellectual life would have to come up with some good responses to those objections. The second candidate is the moral life, introduced to us by Socrates in the Apology and by Aristotle as the political life. However, their idea is somewhat constrained. The moral life is intended to be a much broader concept, allowing all kinds of diversity. Here's the definition. Moral life is human life committed to self-conduct as a person and to some or all areas of belonging, and also empowered by the cardinal virtues, prudence above all. Louisa May Alcott is our first champion of the moral life. Pope St. John, Martin Luther King are champions of the moral life. After Thanksgiving, Martin Heidegger and Joan Baez are also champions of the moral life. One finding we've come to in Philosophy 225 is that the moral life is diverse and can focus on different areas of belonging. For example, Louisa May Alcott will emphasize her family and friendships and encounters, whereas Pope St. John will emphasize the common good. Martin Luther King refers to the importance of his family and also community organizations and also the church. And we've noticed that for some of our authors, there's got to be some intellectual activity there, Martin Luther King, and also theological virtues. Again, Martin Luther King emphasizes those elements are needed for a good life. After the Thanksgiving, Martin Heidegger will add to our ideas about the moral life. He will introduce the concept of a homeland. His idea is that all human life needs a homeland in order to flourish. For Thanksgiving week, we're going to look at one third possible candidate for the good life, which we've looked at in previous semesters. It is called the theological life. You will recall St. Thomas Aquinas distinguishes imperfect happiness and perfect happiness. Theological life is the human life committed to perfect happiness and empowered by the theological virtues. The lives of saints would be an example of the theological life. This week, Leo Tolstoy will provide some ideas to contribute to our concept of the theological life.